Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Liberty Hangout Podcast. My name is Justin, and I'm the founder of libertyhangout.org. I'm joined tonight by Dave from the Seeds of Liberty Podcast, and we will be joined later tonight by the newest contributor to libertyhangout.org, Eric July. Tonight, we will be discussing the ethicality of voting and using the political system to shrink the state. And if we have time, we may also talk about gun control, since it has become a hot topic once again after the events in Oregon last night. Dave, since this is your first time on the show, want to go ahead and introduce yourself to our listeners here?
Sure. Thank you for having me on, Justin. I'm a big fan of yours.
Thank you.
My voice is kind of shot, as you can hear. I've been sick for like the last month. Sorry. But I help run the Seeds of Liberty podcast and network, whatever you want to call it. We're trying to add extra shows every month. We're trying to do whatever we can to get more people involved. But we're spreading the message of voluntarism. We're mainly focused on voluntarism. We don't really talk much about all the statist solutions to fixing freedom. I don't know what they think they're doing, but we mainly focus on voluntarism and why it's a good thing, and we break down stuff that maybe people have hurdles getting over when they hear about a free society, So,
Want to also tell us about your Facebook page called Google Voluntarism and what you hope to achieve with that?
Google Voluntarism is a page that is accompanying a group right now called the Google Voluntarism Squad. And the Google Voluntarism Squad is basically just a secret group where we share pages, comments, whatever. We share it, and as many of us that are available, it's like an all hands on deck. We go into the thread, we go into the post, whatever, and we shred everyone apart. Tell them to Google voluntarism, spread memes, all that, and it's crazy. One of our posts the other day, one of our guys from the squad, his top comment was like 1,000 likes, and it was on a police. It was like on a police website.
Oh wow! So
it was like we actually, I think in that one we dominated. Like the first 10 comments were all ours. So. That's all we're trying to do is make more eyeballs see the word voluntarism. And, oh, hey, here's a simple way to find out what voluntarism is by Googling it.
Yeah, I think that's pretty awesome and a smart tactic to take there.
So the page is just an accompaniment. It's the sister to the squad, and they play off each other. And, page I made at first, it was just so someone could tag Google voluntarism. People would be able to just click on that instead of having to actually open up a page and go to Google Voluntarism. So,
and you guys create a website too for Google Voluntarism?
Yeah, it's called googlevoluntarism.info. A friend of mine, Cody, is working on that, where we're keeping it clean, concise, and neat. It doesn't look like a Angel Fire website or like it was made in '99. It looks clean and neat, and it's all very concise. Go check it out.
All right, awesome. Make sure you guys go check out that website there. So back in April, now to talk about voting here, when I first turned into a voluntarist, I actually wrote an article for Liberty Hangout that was titled "Voting is immoral and not." I don't like
to say people turn into a voluntarist. I think they realize that voluntarism is the best way to treat everyone else.
This is true.
I think they realize, oh wait, I think I'm a voluntarist. I've just been lied to my entire life. Sorry to go on a tangent, but I don't think people turn, and I don't think we get saved or whatnot. Like, it's not like a religious thing or anything like that. It's just like, holy crap, this is exactly how I should be living my life.
It's an enlightenment. And, I know I'm going to talk here about this article I wrote, but I think in conjunction with what you just said, I did once make a video that was called "Everyone's an Anarchist," because at the end of the day, we just want to be left alone.
Most people do, for sure. I don't know if everyone's an anarchist, but for sure.
Yeah. So anyway, moving forward, I did write an article back in April titled, there we go. Now we have Roberto on. He is the editor of Liberty Hangout.
Yeah.
Awesome. So back in April, I did write an article titled "Voting is immoral and not your right." And so the premise of my argument was that casting a vote was an initiation of force, since you are electing a leader who will influence his will upon people. However, in the months since, I've slowly backed away from this stance as I've begun to see how much having a libertarian in office would benefit our lives and our movement compared to, say, having a Bernie Sanders or a Hillary Clinton. So, gentlemen, would you like to go a little more in depth about your philosophies when it comes to voting?
Truth is, for me, like, I used to be so into voting until last year with Mac and them. Mac was the one who, just give me a moment. Mac was the one who actually convinced me that voting is pretty much immoral, coercive, all those like, adjectives. I took upon that. But right now, I'm like in the middle. I torn between the ANCAP side where they're like, oh, voting is slavery. You can't do this. You can't use force against me. Well, you guys seem to take that argument well. Like, you condone it, but it's unrealistic right now. Like, there's no way. I just don't know what to think right now, but I do support some of Rand Paul's efforts. That I will say. I mean, he's closest to libertarianism as it is right now. But I never disliked the guy anyway. Even though here and there he does talk like a politician. He does. I mean, what else can you expect from him? He has to vote according to his own party right now in order to keep that office.
Well, yeah, of course.
That's all I have to say.
What about you, Dave?
To me, it's like this: attack at all angles. That's really the only thing that I'm preaching these days. Everyone wants to say everything's black and white, this and that. Look, I can't make a choice for another person, so I can't tell another person not to vote. I can say I'm not going to vote because I'm morally against it, because voting inevitably leads to force being used on your behalf against innocent people, and that is the opposite of anarchy. But you make those choices in your life. I don't make these choices for you. I'm not voting. I can't tell you what to do. I don't care what you do. Just don't force me to do anything. That's where I'm at this on this specific one. Morally, I'm against voting, but if it was like a vote to, like drown kittens or not, I mean, I'm not voting. I'm voting against drowning kittens. So, but I don't know. I don't see anyone expecting true change, true freedom, and true individual liberty to come out of voting is being bought and sold a lie.
Okay, yeah, I think that's a pretty sound philosophy there.
George Washington even warned against political parties too. Am I right?
Yep. For the most part, all of the founding fathers did. Even the authors of the Constitution, your James Madison's, your Alexander Hamilton, I believe too, in the Federalist Papers, they were warning against political parties. So here are the very men that grew the government from the Articles of Confederation to the massive Constitution, which granted a much larger federal government, and here they are warning about the dangers of political party and a massive state.
Right.
But I think, tailing off of what Dave said here, I think that also, and Eric July is going to join us in a few moments, and his premise is that at the end of the day, we have to be attuned to the fact that we are going to be stuck with a leader whether we like it or not. So shouldn't we at least try to minimize the damage, get the leader who's going to do the least amount of damage? So even if 319.9 million people choose not to vote, if one person goes out to vote, you're going to get stuck with a leader.
I mean, we're going to get raped, right? So we might as well at least have an orgasm. That's your argument.
For the most, I mean, I like to use my friend Liam's argument, is that wouldn't you prefer 6 whips a day to 10 whips a day?
Yeah.
I would prefer a lot of things, but all you're doing is making a concession when you say, I'll accept this much slavery. I accept no slavery.
Yeah. Well, can we at the same time accept no slavery, but try to minimize the whipping so we can at least buy ourselves more time?
I can't force my opinion on another person. I don't know. I'm not your ruler. I don't know how to tell you how to do things. That's the lie that is bought and sold. That's why people vote, is because they believe that they can do that.
Yeah, yeah.
When the voting in government is just a puppet show. Doesn't even matter. So That's how I feel about voting. Yeah, I just think it's a huge, colossal waste of time. You could be farming, you could be buying, um, property and creating things and making money instead of sitting around waiting for someone else to do it, which is what voting is.
Okay, so what would you
But
say?
like I said, attack from all angles. I'm not bashing someone who personally wants to vote.
Correct.
Go and vote.
Correct.
If you are okay with sleeping at night, knowing that you're using force against innocent people, against peaceful people, then so be it. Go do you. Just leave me alone.
It's hard to say such a thing in a time like this, though, because more and more people nowadays, they're being more convinced that they should vote no matter what. It doesn't matter the party, it doesn't matter the candidate. What matters is that you voted, you participated, period.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. If only like 10 million people came out to vote next year or during this coming election and the rest of the population didn't vote, how would the rest of the population handle the government if they're like, I did not vote for this guy at all. I don't give a shit about this guy. All right? Versus is if 90% of people voted and they got a bad government out of it. You see what I'm saying? People are going to be like, I didn't consent to any of this, but the government can come back and say the voters voted for this. We're just doing what the voters wanted.
And just to chime in for a second, fellows,
the case for defensive voting is completely shat upon by the fact that if you claim to be an anarchist, you cannot advocate for violence against another individual in any case.
All right, just to chime in,
Unless
fellas,
it's self-defense.
we are now joined by the latest contributor to libertyhangout.org, the one and only Eric July. How are you doing today, Eric?
Doing good, brother. What's going on, man?
Doing awesome. So what do you make of the case for voting in self-defense, as Dave just made there?
Well, I don't necessarily call voting necessarily an act of self-defense. I don't necessarily. That's never been my argument. But what I will say is that I had the opportunity of living, out here in Texas, and really seeing how Ron Paul changed the lives of a lot of individuals, not just myself, but a lot of other individuals, and really getting them to understand what it's, I guess, the role that the state has, and really trying to, I guess, he turned people away from, having this particular expectation of government. And again, this wasn't just with myself, it was with a lot of people. So I don't think that, again, I've never said that, hey, voting is an act of self-defense. No, my thing is, I would think it would be very, very beneficial to any kind of liberty movement if we had a bunch of, Ron Pauls in office, everywhere. I think that would be a lot more beneficial than, because this is what, because I used to be that anarchist that was, hey, don't vote. That used to be me. But then the harsh reality is that whether I vote or not, there are still going to be people that do vote, and they will put people in office who are going to rule me. It doesn't matter what I have to say about that. That's the harsh reality of it. So whether I sit back, from the sideline and I take shots and say, dethrone government needs to get, yeah, that's perfectly fine. But again, on the other half, there's always going to be some, well, I don't want to say always going to be, but there is right now, and it has been like this other group of people who expand government. And the liberty movement, and this is the harsh reality, whether you're a minarchist, whether you're an ANCAP, the liberty movement hasn't necessarily gained ground, so to speak, because if you look at the voter turnouts for the now and how they were 100 years ago, they're the same. They're the same. They're just hovering around the same percentage it has been 100 years ago. And I, being a millennial, I being somebody who is not far removed from college, I see all of these young leftists, and all of these guys want to expand government. So have we really made any ground? So while I do understand the argument that, all right, well, if you're an anarchist, don't vote, I understand that, and it makes sense. However, because there is always going to be, or at least right now, we have another side of it that is like, look, man, I want you to expand government. Get in there, expand government. I think it would be beneficial for all us, as whether it be ANCAPs or whatever you want to call yourselves, to have people like Ron Paul in office. We can still attack the issue from a social standpoint, telling people the dangers of government. However, I mean, damn, if we look at how Ron Paul changed it, and I look at people that turned me into, an ANCAP, none of those guys were anarchists. Ron Paul isn't, he said anarchy is a good idea, but let's not sugarcoat this. Ron Paul isn't an anarchist. You know what I mean? Thomas Sowell isn't an anarchist. Walter Williams isn't an anarchist, but these were all the guys that influenced me, and turned me into, okay, I feel like the government should not exist. It is a monopoly on violence. I feel like that it should not exist, and it doesn't need to exist for us to have a civilized society. So again, these were people that turned me to anarchy. None of those guys were actually anarchists. So I understand the argument. I understand the argument, and that's how I thought. But in the same respects, I guess I had to kind of take a step back and become a realist. And I know if we had a bunch of Ron Pauls everywhere, then our movement would gain a lot more ground than what it has over the last 100 years.
Now, I thought that was a brilliant argument there, Eric, and I know you just said that we need more Ron Pauls in government. Now, that leads me to my next question for you guys. How important do you think it is to get involved politically, at least at the local level? Because we see a lot of states starting to loosen their gun control laws because of the pushback from the right and from libertarians. Texas obviously just adopted open carry this new year, and states are starting to push back on the drug war. We see Colorado just legalized marijuana. A bunch of other states are thinking of doing this. So at least at the local level, how much do you think can be achieved, and how much of an involvement should we have in politics in our local town and in our state?
There was a quote that the Speaker of the House from the 70s once said, Tip O'Neill, all
Can you
politics
back
are
that
local.
microphone off your mouth?
What?
Back that microphone off your mouth.
True. Thank you. Yeah. Like I said, there's a quote that Tip O'Neill, the Speaker of the House of the 70s and 80s once said. He said all politics are local. And even though I disagree with that man on many points, he does have a point there. And yeah, I totally think that we should go to politics on the local level first before going to Congress. That's what I always tell libertarians too, who every 4 years they think they can win the general election just like that. But realistically, they can't, even though during the past 4 years, from 2008 to 2012, they've been getting more and more votes. They're the fastest growing party right now.
Yeah, and I think even too,
I'm correct.
it's worth thinking about how much is actually practical through philosophies such as agorism, because as fine and dandy as it sounds, at the end of the day, you're not going to get private security forces through agorism the same way you are if you use local politics to do that and privatize the police force, which has been done in a few towns in the United States.
Absolutely. I mean, and to me, to touch on that, I mean, I would think, honestly, that would be where we would have to start. Again, if we had guys, I do see guys having their own movements around the U.S., and not just around the U.S., to be fair. It's other areas as well. They're very active and locally, and kind of having this whole movement of, hey, let's put our minds together and let's go do this and let's go do that. I'm all for that, and I do believe that. Again, I had the opportunity of living in an area where Ron Paul was representing, and again, he did hit Congress, but I do believe that we can actually, if we can in our local government get a group of guys, whether they be libertarians or whatever they want to call themselves, they want to scale back on said government. I do feel like that will be very, very effective. Now, the problem with that is that that's gonna require that us as libertarians become a lot more, I guess, organized. And I think that's really my biggest knock of my fellow libertarians, is that we are we're a very disorganized bunch. We're all over the place in our ideology one person believes, or not one person, I guess the ideology is, this is the way I'm a libertarian, this is the way I'm a libertarian. And again, all of that is great, but I do feel like we are all on the same team. We do despise of the government. So if we kind of put our heads together and more so, I'm not saying this from a socialist standpoint, but I'm saying collectively, if we put our heads together.
Voluntarily, collectively.
Yeah, voluntarily, collectively, put our heads together and got some things done, I do feel like we will really make things shake. But again, that's going to require a lot more organization, because I've had even like pushback at the local level and talking to my fellow libertarians that are more so like, I guess, constitutionalists. They think my ideals are completely out of this world. But, I criticize my fellow endcaps. I've criticized minorities. I'm like, look, we're doing all this crying and complaining, and this is why we look like like we're out of there. When we go talk to people that aren't libertarians, they think we got our tinfoil hats and they think we're just crazy as hell. You know what I mean? But again, that's why I can see, if they see us constantly at each other's neck on some nonsense, I can understand where they're coming from in that regards. But it will take some organization. But I do feel like if we do that and we put our heads together and we start attacking, and I fall victim to this as well. I'm really I need to kind of put my, not my money where my mouth is, but my actions as well, because I was kind of straying away from being involved politically. But I do think that, whether it be on my platform or whatever platform that I have, I seriously think from the local level, if I actually get this and use this properly at some point in time, along with my fellow libertarians around in this area, we can really, really make some noise.
I think you raise a good point there about how imperative it is for us to be united as libertarians, because we see this same thing mimicked in the political process, where within the Republican Party, for example, you have it's split between your constitutionalists and your libertarians and your neocon establishment. And then the reason they're never winning, they're not, I mean, you can say they have the majority right now in the House and the Senate, but for the most part, they're not resonating with the American people and losing these big national elections because they lack the unity that the Democratic Party has.
Right, absolutely.
At least the Democrats, for them, like, they have this one group called the Blue Dog Democrats who are, like, moderate and conservative, and yet they somehow find a way to be united with the main Democrat Party, and that still baffles me. Like, how does that happen?
I think at the end of the day, I'm not saying that us as libertarians should cede our principles. I think that we should absolutely stand on principles 100%.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but I think Democrats are willing to give an inch, so to speak, just to
if we're
put an emphasis on winning and getting their ideas across at the national level.
If we're going to stand on our principles, is voting an act of aggression or not?
I don't think so, because I think
Why do you not think that?
I don't think voting is itself an act of aggression, because Walter Block made a fantastic argument when he was on the Tom Woods show with Bob Murphy, and he was saying that if a libertarian is going to use the state to shrink the state, is an honorable act. So if we are going to vote to shrink the government, it's in essence the same as using the government roads or using the internet, which is partially subsidized by the state. So at the end of
taxation pays for all of those votes to be counted and all that other stuff to be done, legislation to be enacted and all that. Mm-hmm. That is your act of aggression right there. So voting is an act of aggression. There's no way around it.
So is it? But if it's an act of aggression, that implies that I'm the one doing the aggressing. Is it? If I'm voting with the incentive of shrinking the state.
If I walk up to another person and say, "Hey, go kill another person," I'm just as culpable if they kill that person.
But
that's just the same way as voting.
I think we can even make this case. I think we can even make this case when it comes to case law and common law that guilt is going to be measured by the incentive. So if I'm voting with the incentive of shrinking the state, like let's say I vote for Rand Paul.
No, you're just trying to rationalize aggression now. We have to.
Let's say, hold on one second.
With the first principle.
Let's say
everyone owns themselves, and the non-aggression principle. Voting is an act of aggression because it subverts self-ownership. There's no other way around it. It should be crystal clear at this point.
All right, so wait a minute. Hold on, let me touch on that really quick. So by that same logic, you cannot consider yourself a capitalist if you use state-funded roads, whatever. I mean, there's so many different things that you use No. Wait a minute. Hold on. Let me finish that. There's so many things that you utilize and I utilize that are state funded. So again, we're talking about aggression. These were paid for by the funds that were pimped out of people through force.
No. I understand your point, but let me ask you a question. Do you realize that there's multiple interactions with the state?
Absolutely.
Okay, so there's involuntary and voluntary. So you don't live in Australia where it's mandatory. You have to vote in Australia. Okay, so
you pay a fine.
You have a fine, which if you don't pay the fine, they come kill you if you resist. So
yeah. It sucks.
So you have the involuntary and the voluntary. So voluntary is like going and signing up for Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security, all this other stuff, voting, all that. Involuntary is like the police, the roads, the military, that shit that you have no control of whatsoever. All right? So we all have choices in our life, and if you're okay with subverting principles that you claim to have, that's just a thing you do. I'm not
saying no. I just think that again that's faulty logic. That's kind of you're moving the goalpost there by saying, well, okay, that's a little different from states funding the police and states funding the roads. That's a little different from voting. Again, I have seen entirely too many anarchists that love and support people like Ron Paul. You know what I mean? And I have been influenced by people like Ron Paul. And he went within the state, as a representative, both for the Libertarian Party and for the Republican Party, to get his word out. So I'm like, how can we sit here and be like, well, wait a minute, it's hard for us. We're not standing on our principle by wanting to get a guy or guys out there that have that similar mindset where, look, the government we need to get rid of it, scale back on it in its entirety. We would be foolish because at the end of the day, again, I understand what you're saying, but at the end of the day, we still have to combat the people that are saying we don't give a damn about none of that. We're going to use the government to own you and rule you.
You missed a little bit from what I was saying earlier before you got on the show. And this is when I speak, I only speak of myself. All right? I can't make choices for other people. So I only speak for myself, and what I was saying is I'm now under the attack from all angles thing. So your guys who are trying to get limited government in, good, go do it. If that's what makes you feel like your life is being fulfilled, go do it. All right? But I, on moral grounds, cannot do it. I will not involve myself with anything government.
I understand that. No, that I understand.
That's
don't get
just
me wrong,
a personal thing. And
don't get me wrong. I understand exactly what you're saying.
Pragmatic. And that's where the argument gets muddled, is because you have people making the pragmatic case versus people making the moral case. All right? The pragmatic case is this is thrust upon you when the empire is sent on you. You got to fight back. You got to do whatever you can, and I'm kind of making a semi-pragmatic thing. I don't care what you do. I'm not voting. I'm not involving myself with it. But I'm not going to sit there and I'm not going to come down to your job and knock the dick out of your mouth. It's that simple.
Dave, I have a question for you, because you were talking about the whole involuntary actions versus the voluntary actions when it comes to government. Now, let's say you are a Jew and you are under the rule of a Nazi concentration camp, and you have no choice that you are going to get a guard at this concentration camp, but they let you choose.
I would have never made it to the concentration camps, Justin. I would have been killed as soon as they tried to get me out of the house.
Well, let's say, just for the sake of the argument, you're there, and you have to choose a guard for the concentration camp. And you can choose a guard that's going to give you 5 whips a day, or you can choose a guard that's going to brutally whip every single person in the camp 20 times a day. Is it an act of aggression to choose the guy that's going to whip you 5 times a day?
No, that's not what voting is. Voting is saying, hey, go whip that other guy 5 times a day.
But if you are voting for this guard, you are doing so knowing that he's going to whip every single other person in the concentration camp 5 times a day.
I personally understand, Justin. I personally have the view that voting it not only makes you a slave, but it also creates other slaves, and I personally can't do that. And I'm not talking about voting for like American Idol. I'm talking about voting for political masters.
Well, again, I understand the argument. I mean, but I just don't think that it has to do with anything with. I don't like. I understand the argument of, look, I want to stay, morally, I guess, grounded rather, and I don't want. I just want to be. I guess you think that you're being consistent, and I respect that, and I understand that. But what I'm saying is that if we apply that same logic across the board, again, going back to all the things that the state does
when
for
you're
us,
not consistent, you turn into Cantwell, and that's what I'm trying to avoid.
Well, I understand. No, I can't. We all agree that that's not where we want to be. But what I'm saying is, I just really don't think that it can be a complete knock on somebody, whether it be as an anarchist, to say that, look, you can't be considered an anarchist because you participate in the process, the political process that we have right now. That is where I disagree. I'm not knocking you for saying, all right, well, I'm personally not going to vote. I'm not knocking you on that. What I'm saying is, I participate in the political process. I'm not saying I go out there and vote for neocons, or I want to vote for rulers all day long. That is not what I'm saying. If I am going to support you in any way, shape, or fashion, you are going to have I guess the root is going to have to be, look, I want to get the state the hell out of the way. And I'm telling you, I just can't say, maybe it's because I lived out here and I got to see this man influence so many and turn people into handcaps for that one. But Ron Paul, he went out there and he really got that message out there. And I'm like, look, I'm thinking from a wholesale standpoint, like, damn, if we had a Ron Paul out here in Texas, 3 or 4 out here in Texas, 3 or 4 out there in California, 3 or 4 out there in Florida, and we had these guys that were legitimately running on the premise of, look, we don't like the state, I think that we would have a lot of more, I guess, covered ground, rather, if we took that.
That's why I said attack at all angles. And
right. Well, I respect you. No, I respect you for saying, you're saying that, look, I myself am not going to do it, but I'm going to attack it in this way, shape, or form. And if y'all want to go attack it in that way, go rock that out. I respect that. I respect that from you. However, I will say that there are people who are more so elitist, and they say, look, if we're going to do it, we have to do it one way. And again, I just think
those are collectivists because they want them to do it their way.
Exactly.
Here's the thing, Eric, and here's the thing a lot of people need to understand is you never need to believe someone's bullshit 100%. Whatever I say, to pick it apart, I don't care. I'm just saying what I say, but never believe someone's shit 100%. So, like, that's why you got into Ron Paul, and it led you down this path, is because you didn't believe his shit 100%.
Absolutely.
So that's the thing, is you can't believe everyone's shit 100%, but I'm like this, there's 1,000 ways to dance, just don't go on the dance floor and step on everybody's shoes. It's that simple.
No, absolutely. No, I think honestly, and this is a great discussion, because I do feel like if we have that mindset, and this is, I was that elitist. I am not going to hot side. If you'd asked me this question, maybe
I think everyone goes through that phase, right?
Yeah, a year ago, where I'm like, no, we don't do it this way. This is wrong. You're wrong if you do it that way. Like, I used to be on that mindset, man, and I really don't think that really gets us anywhere. I think if we do attack it from all angles, we're going to all benefit. It is good to have those guys that are, strictly without use of the government, they're going to attack this issue. It is great to have those guys, because there are people that are going to be more so influenced in that way, shape, form, or fashion.
Look, it's like this, okay? I can't completely 100% shit all over voting in its entirety from a pragmatic stance, okay? Moral stance I can, because on moral grounds I'm correct on this. But on pragmatic, the British Empire, slavery was ended in the British Empire, when they owned the fucking world, by a vote. So you can't tell me that didn't work. That didn't make a lot of more people's life better. That wasn't an overall net gain for government, but still, that's a second order of effect. Government is the problem. So we should always work to abolish government. Government is never going to allow itself to abolish itself.
No, not at all.
Right.
No,
I think an argument too that we can make from the pragmatic standpoint is that by voting to abolish these things, such as they abolished slavery via a vote in England, and they allowed open carry in Texas now, and we see all these states abolishing the war on drugs in their states with marijuana, does this then buy us more time to abolish the state in its entirety?
Yeah, Absolutely, but gradually.
Yeah, because I think someone made the argument in an ANCAP Facebook group where they were saying, why in this day and age are so many ANCAPs and libertarians making the political argument instead of pushing for black markets and agorism, yada yada. And I remember Eric and I commented and we said because it's difficult to push for freedom when you're locked behind a jail cell. I mean, I know that we can point to the Gandhis and the Irwin Schiffs and people of that nature, Adam Kokesh, but they are your rarities. We still have more than 2 million people locked in jail for nonviolent victims crimes, and they're not being heard.
You're completely ineffective. Look, man, this is from me growing up gang banging and doing all that. I've been in and out of jail, man. So it's like, man, I am of no use. If I'm out there, and this is not the argument that just not necessarily just anarchists make. I think when I tell people I'm an ANCAP, they love to make that argument. Well, why don't you go and do that? Why don't you go do that? I'm like, what? Oh, so you want me to go out there and get my ass locked up? You know what I mean? Go out there and get locked up, and then I'm behind a jail cell, in which I'm behind that jail cell. I am completely ineffective. I cannot get this word out. So don't get me wrong, man. If I can dodge, I know I probably shouldn't be saying this on the air, but if I can dodge attacks or two, you know what I mean, I'm gonna do it. You know what I mean? Don't get it twisted. But in the same respects, you got to be somewhat strategic about it. You have to be somewhat strategic about it. You have to, understand that, look, it's okay to do this, but if I do this and I'm going to go get my ass locked up for, years at a time, then how exactly am I going to be able to advance this movement if I myself am locked up behind a jail cell? So most definitely it's not. You got to be strategic with it. People make sacrifices all the time, and I do understand that. I respect that. There are people that, get locked up over really just believing in or staying rooted in their principles. I understand that, and I'm more power to them. But in the same respects, I have all of these platforms in which I'm trying to get this message out. Music and whether it be Facebook, talking, going to city hall meetings, saying all of y'all are full of crap. I can't do that stuff and get tossed out like I always do. I can't do that stuff if I'm locked up behind a jail cell. You know what I mean? So you got to be strategic with it in the same respect.
At this point in time in my spreading of voluntarism, I am at the point now with people where I ask them, are you going to be the one standing at the gate begging for another government when this one collapses? If not, we can be friends.
Right. I just thought of something, guys, and I really want to get your thought on it. So if we can say that if voting is an act of aggression because you know that someone will become a leader and they will be using aggression against people, can we consistently say that encouraging black markets is an act of aggression, understanding that people are going to be aggressed upon and thrown into jail? What do you guys think of that?
I don't see the relationship between throwing people in jail and promoting free markets.
No. So what I'm saying, I think we may have lost.
Rephrase that.
Okay, so if the argument goes that voting is an act of aggression because you're going to choose someone to be a leader under the knowledge that people are going to be aggressed upon, if you're going to advocate for black markets under the knowledge that these people are going to be aggressed upon by the state for their actions and thrown in jail, is the act of encouraging people to engage in black markets in and of itself an act of aggression by the same token?
I think you can tell anyone to do anything. If they decide to do something, that's their choice.
Mm-hmm.
Like right now, Justin, go kill yourself. All right? Did I just kill Justin? No. Justin would have to do that. So that's.
So then, can't we say the same thing about? So then, holding that consistently, can't we say the same thing about voting? If I'm voting for Rand Paul with the intention that I want him to shrink government, if he then doesn't shrink government, is that on his part? Is that him aggressing?
He is definitely aggressing.
That's like a 20,000th order of effect on the thing. Government shouldn't exist for Rand Paul to be elected.
Well, no, see, that is something, and you bring up a great point, Dave, because that is something that I have been pretty, at least in that respect. I've been pretty consistent in mentioning that and saying that, look, when something happens, if this person, I'm always like, don't get it twisted. That person's position, if, ideally, if I guess had it the way I guess envisioned it, that person's position would not exist. You know what I mean? Don't get it twisted. And I think that, I guess the better argument is to make is that, okay, can you really consider it an act of aggression if there's a candidate who has every intention, and let's say for the sake of the conversation follows through with it, every intention on minimum, like basically scaling back on the state.
So like Adam Kokesh in 2020.
Right, yeah, that's what he's saying. He's saying, look, I'm trying to get in there. I'm trying to dissolve the federal government. So can you really consider that an act of aggression if that person is saying, look, or again, just for the sake of conversation, let's say they do it. Let's say they because anybody can blow out hot air and say, yeah, I'm going to do this, and then they go do some other.
You honestly think if Rand Paul got elected and tried to start doing anything kind of ANCAP, or she wouldn't be killed immediately?
I believe that he'll probably get his head sniped off. I'm not saying that.
All right, so all we're asking now is for Rand Paul to be an ANCAP martyr. I think that might be a little aggressive for us, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, in a sense.
I mean, he is making these choices, just
right.
like JFK when he said, I'm going back to the silver standard, and they said, don't do it. And he said, I'm going back to the silver standard, and he got killed.
And
then the guy comes in and goes, hey, we're not going back to silver standard.
Right. Well, right. So, no, I understand that argument, but in the same respect, do you feel as if, I guess, and this is a legitimate question, because I think
the people aren't even ready for a Trump, somebody completely outside of the establishment, a Trump to get in. They're fucking screaming about that. Could you imagine Rand Paul if it was serious? If he was really up there contending Hillary?
Oh man!
People will be losing their damn mind. So he's not going to win. Rand Paul is his only job should be to spread anarchy, and he's blowing it.
But all right, but this is what I'm saying. Look, I think,
anarchists.
Well, no,
I'm sorry, man. Your mic is really bad, and it's really hard to understand you. That's all right.
Go ahead, Eric.
But no, I think that it'll do us a lot of good. I think it'll do us a lot of good if we have. I think that really it has to be in numbers, and this is just strictly my opinion.
You might let the cat out of the bag faster, but I mean, all we're looking for with anarchy or with voluntarism is a bandwagon effect to kick in. That's all we're waiting for all of us to be talking about people going, oh yeah, shit, that was last year. That's all we're waiting for, all right?
Right.
So that's our goal.
I think, yeah, no matter on what end that you're attacking, I believe that, yeah, most definitely that's our goal. But again, that's why I'm saying that I believe that in numbers, if we had guys from the political standpoint that were, I guess, really attacking it from the political standpoint, not just one lone guy at the presidential level saying, I'm going to do this, I'm going to, audit the Fed, I'm going to end the Fed, I'm going to, stand against these, that's one person.
Well, what we should do then is every ANCAP and every voluntarist should just start going out and getting government jobs and doing the shittiest possible job you possibly can, making it as efficient as possible. But still, I couldn't do that because no, you don't want.
I mean,
think most of those whistleblowers are like CIA ops.
Yeah, but again, but like I said,
crazy.
Right, but again, I mean, I seriously do believe that. I mean, maybe that's what it takes. I mean, maybe that kicks in a whole like wave of people that are like, you know what, I'll use the government to do this, or I guess apply non-aggression. Those kind of conflict. I do understand that, but again, I just really think that it'll benefit us if we had more than one. It's always every. Whether it be 2012, 2008 election, we get one person, who was in the spotlight. It's been Ron Paul for the last four-year election cycles, who was out there saying, look, let's get the government out the way. Let's get the government out the way. He's the only one, so he sounds like a complete loon, amongst a bunch of, and really we agree that the other guys are the ones that are loons, but they're always saying is, amongst a bunch of stupid people, the smart person looks stupid.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
You know what I mean? So I really do think that, and this is what my goal is. Again, this is just strictly my opinion, and that when I'm a young cat, so this probably wouldn't be in the near future, but I would love to try to get a wave of fellow libertarians, specifically ANCAPs, because they're going to be the most I guess radical radical guys that are going to say, I'm getting in here, I'm trying to abolish everything I could touch. You know what I mean? I do think that if we kind of put our minds together, again, this is strictly opinion.
Yeah, we were talking the other day about the localization. Sorry to cut you off, but you really just struck something in my head. Justin asked about the localization thing, and we were talking the other day, a few of us around the house. I've got my brother's an anarchist, and my cousin is as well. And it's due to me. But we were talking about, like, why don't one of us run for sheriff and just say, all right, look, boys, you're not leaving. Go to the station. You're sitting there twiddling thumbs. If someone calls and is like, I'm getting murdered, come help, then you go do it.
Right.
We're not going to be out searching for tickets, doing all this other shit. But, you know, even that has to be paid for by collectivization and theft.
Right.
So, like, I can't do it.
No, so I understand. I understand that, and that used to be my mindset
because
as well.
At the local level, the sheriff might as well be God. Okay? The sheriff is like the only one that can, like fuck you over for real. The only person that can arrest the sheriff is a coroner. Okay?
Right. Right. No, that's a legitimate. I'm not saying that isn't an illegitimate argument. It's a very, very, very legitimate argument.
You don't mind me chiming in there. Let's say you did, just for the case of the argument here, let's say you did accept the job as sheriff of the town. What if you did this and then, like you said, obviously the funds would be collected coercively. What if, knowing this, you then returned these funds to the taxpayers? Is that then ethical?
Took no pay and just donated it all to charity or
just give it right back
to
the taxpayer.
Or right back to the taxpayer. Yeah.
Because you're not the one. You're not the one who actually stole the money. So now this money is being diverted to you. So then, it's ethical for you to give it back to them.
Yeah, but you got to tax someone to pay for the clerks to write the checks to give the money back.
So yeah, I mean that's going to be a circular thing.
Okay. You might as well just send the money to an orphanage. It'd be easier.
Right. But I mean, I do really, seriously believe that. I mean, if positions like that, I mean, don't get me twisted. I'm not just talking about Texas House of Representative or anything like that, Texas Senate, mayor. No, there's so many different government agencies and departments that you can really be a part of, and I think really, from a voluntarily, collective standpoint, if we actually did that and we and we stuck to our guns, because my thing is that I would love to, at some point make enough money to where, and this is really why I want to take the time for the next 10 years and keep grinding like I have been. I would love to make enough money to be a guy that goes out there and says, look, I'm not going to accept a dime, of tax money from you, and I'm going in there. My number one goal is to, shrink government, get rid of it. I'm not gonna make that a secret. That's gonna be my entire campaign. I'm probably gonna get shot in the process, but that's cool. You know what I mean? That's completely cool.
You should run and say, I'm not even gonna go to work. I'm gonna keep my day job. I'm just like, it'll literally, you're electing a vacant seat.
I'm just gonna go golf.
Yeah,
I'm gonna go golf.
Right, but again, go ahead.
The truth is, going back to voting, part of me does view, endorsing candidates as like, you're trying to choose the best person for the job. You know what I'm saying? Well, right. Another part of me is like, okay, after you vote for that person, if they win, like, I'll just give them 50-50. 50 will say they're going to do the job that they promised to their people, while the other part of me is like, they're so powerful, power corrupts people, and it's a pretty dangerous job too.
Yeah, right. And it's the whole incentive structure of government too. Tom Woods talks about this a lot, where he goes into the whole Austrian economics behind government, and he says that government's incentive is to fail, because the more it fails, the more money it gets. Whereas a private entity, its incentive is to succeed, because the more it succeeds, the more money it will get.
Absolutely. I honestly think that's probably...
people are against private enterprise too. I'm not even sure why they despise success either.
Well,
it's because they don't understand it.
It's been embedded in them, that they believe that government must exist. They believe that if it exists, it's going to protect them and all of that. And that's the only way that they can be protected, is that there's some huge centralized monopoly of violence that's out there, doing these, protecting people. That's the illusion of government, and that's what they feel as if it is supposed to. They feel like that's what it does, and that's why people are so against, free enterprise and whatnot. But again, like you said, power does corrupt people, and that's the dangerous thing, which is why I really don't understand. And I know this is kind of on the point, but getting off topic. When we go talk about the guys that are openly expanding government, like Bernie Sanders, it's not a secret. He doesn't do that in secret. He's running. His whole campaign is, hey guys, I'm about to expand this bad boy. That's his platform. It's no secret. So, and you have guys like that, and you would think that for somebody who has literally been a career politician, you know what I mean? Literally been a career politician. You would think that these would be the first guys that people say, well, wait a minute, why would we trust these people with ruling our lives? But again, that's the hard thing to try to combat these days. Definitely as an endcap, because it's like you have guys that are openly wanting to get these people in office, openly wanting them to run their lives. So even we're like, we don't want no damn rulers. They're like, hey guys, I want a ruler, and they're very well going to use the political process to get a ruler, to make these false, hollow promises, to continue to rob people even more than they're robbing people already. You know what I mean? It leaves you kind of in a tight spot, which is why I do feel as if ANCAPs and guys that really do not believe in the government, it's very like we have to attack them from all angles, because again, that is a very, very, very tough thing to combat, because you have guys that are like, hey, I'm about to expand the government, and you have guys very, very attracted to them.
Well, I'll say this: statists are attacking at all angles. We'd be foolish not to as well. But I will say this, and if you take away anything from me, anyone listening to the show, you guys, whatever, you make political actions, you're going to get political outcomes. That's just the facts.
That's politics.
You're going to have to make concessions. You're going to have to give that. You're going to have to give $60 billion to that senator so he can build that bridge, or he's not voting. You're always going to have to make concessions. And if you're going to stand on principles and morals, you can't make concessions.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there, but I think adding on to Eric's point, I think that as libertarians, it's paramount that we don't outright reject politics, because whether or not we vote, I think that we should at least pay attention to the political process, because this is where people are going to solve problems. So while we may not use government ourselves,
the other people are.
Yeah. So this is where we find the conservatives. This is where we find the liberals that are potential anarchists in the future, and we can open them up to our ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I mean,
I follow a bunch of variety of people online to reach out to them.
Right. No, that's a great point. That's a great point. I mean, going to your point, Justin, like the people that I have been able to successfully, and I'm making note of this, successfully convert into, voluntarism and anarchism, and they have all been former conservatives. Like I'm a rarity, because I never became a conservative. Like I was a hardcore leftist. It was embedded in me, and then I just up and read Basic Economics by
Thomas Sowell.
By Thomas Sowell, and I was like, what the hell? And then 6 months later, 6 months later, I became an anarchist. So it was literally, that's a rarity. But for the most part, all the guys.
How did you find Sowell? How did you find it? What made you buy that book?
Great question, because I was still stuck in my box. Literally, I had just came off campaigning for Barack Obama. So I was still stuck in my box of, well, I need to go go look at the black people that do this, the black people that do that. And I took a class in economics at the University of Memphis. And then I was like, hey, let's see if there's some black economists out there. And that's how I stumbled upon the first two there ain't that many of them, but the first two I stumbled upon were Walter Williams and Thomas Sowell. Both of them have Basic Economics book, and I swear to God, it changed my life. I was reading this book, and I might have got to chapter 3, and I was like, everything.
That makes sense.
Yes, it's like oh my God, like why am I believing in government? Like do I believe that it has to exist when their sole purpose has been to manipulate the economy?
So your racial-based collectivism led you to anarchy.
Yep.
That's why I say attack from all angles.
Right. You have to attack from all angles, and because like you look at things like that, and there's everybody has their own story. Some people turn. I think Ron Paul, he's turned several people into anarchism.
But has it turned anybody? I don't think people get turned into anarchists. What I think is someone comes along and says, hey, there's a key on the floor that you should probably look at. And then you go, there's a key? Wait a second, I'm in a cage.
Right. There you go.
And then you're out trying to grab the key because no one can make you free. No one can give you this. You have to want that. And I think it's this society we live in. When you hear something like Zoroastrianism, you got to go fucking look and read about it for like 10 hours straight so you know everything about it. And that's what happened with me. I heard voluntarism, boom, looking it up. And then I was like, let me read a book on it. I read For a New Liberty by Rothbard. And 3-4 chapters in, I'm like, I haven't disagreed with one thing he said.
Man. But it's crazy how that stuff happens. And I mean, that's why I've kind of been taking note of, all right, when I go speak to people, definitely out here in the local level because I'm very, very active out here. And when I go to these, whether it be town meetings, Libertarian Party, their little get-togethers and all of that, and the people that I've been able to, I guess, convert into, anarchists and that, well, not necessarily convert, but will give it the time of day and not think that I'm crap crazy. They've all been either, hanging around the minarchists or the conservatives. The liberals, the leftists, have not given me the time of day. Like I say, look, man, this is voluntarism. You probably should Google that. They're like, well, no, you're crazy. You believe in fascism. And I'm like, you don't know what fascism is, but whatever. It's crazy. It's crazy though, but
Most American socialists do not understand that they advocate openly and happily for fascism.
Yeah.
True socialism would terrify the shit out of real American socialists.
You know what's
It
funny?
would terrify them. Like if you walked up to a fucking Bernie Sanders supporter with their cell phone in their hand and you said, "Hey, are you like really cool with bread lines?" They'd be like, "Are you? Where at? Panera Bread?" It wouldn't be like, "What are you?" No, I'm talking about government. Like where like they choose and you have a card you give them, they punch it, you got your only bread for the day.
Right.
They don't see that side of socialism, which it always turns into.
Right.
Now, so before we wrap up here, guys, I wanted to talk quickly about gun control. So now, in light of all these studies that show that gun control actually kills and gun leniency, if that's what you want to call it, actually saves, why do you think the cries from the left for gun control are still getting louder today?
Who runs the media in the country? The big globalists, the big guys, the big elites, the CIA and all that filters everything they say. This is a forced narrative. There's no anti-gun culture that's worth giving a goddamn to in this country. Go look at Moms Demand Gun Sense's Facebook page, and then go look at a pro-gun Facebook page. A shitty one will have more likes.
I've never even thought about it like that.
People
they're minuscule, but their narratives getting shoved down our throats.
The people they're like turned on to sound bites too and abridged stuff because, more and more Americans are busy throughout the whole day and they don't have time philosophizing about politics and economics and certain issues and whatnot because, well, I can't even speak for them because, well, for one thing, we can agree that most Americans are kind of lazy. I could be wrong.
I think that's a little generalizing, but yeah, I mean, also lazy is very subjective, but I don't know.
I mean, no, I'll agree that they are. I mean, I think just in my own personal experience that they are. But I mean, I think as far as gun control, the narrative it does become louder. This because they do have definitely the left. They have a monopoly on media in general. I mean, they have it. It's no doubt about it. Social media, they have a lockdown on it, and they will use that platform to, even though it's complete buffoonery. When you look at the data, homicides, gun ownership has gone up. homicide rates have gone down. You know, the empirical evidence is there, but they don't give a damn about
the three biggest firearm homicide cities, because you can wipe every, like, all right, someone who wants to commit suicide is going to find out any way they can. So to blame gun death or suicides on guns is fucking retarded. Sorry to say the F word again. It makes no sense to me. But so this whole anti-gun thing, you take away, you look at Chicago, St. Louis, and New Orleans. Everyone thinks it's a race thing. It's not a race thing. It's a law thing. They've stripped everyone out there that's law-abiding. Not every black person's a gun-toting gangster.
True.
Right.
Shocker. You take away all the people that don't want to go to jail for having a gun. You take their guns away, and all the bad guys got guns. And then that's all the media shows. Oh, the black guys are shooting everybody up.
Yeah.
Well, if every black guy had a gun, there wouldn't be a gunshot heard in Chicago all day.
And I think on top of that too, people.
No one wants to get shot back at. Trust me, I've been there.
I think on top of that too, people don't really see how all these progressive laws tie into each other that lead to this crime culture. So, for example, over the summer, I wrote an article called "Why People Commit Violent Crime" or something along the lines of that.
I read that article. It's very good. I like that one.
Yeah, and I gave the economic argument how I was showing that, you know what, people are naturally self-interested, and they are going to look to boost their own life and their own standard of living in the most expedient way possible. And so when the government is going to step in and they're going to keep raising your barrier of entry to the point where in the city of Chicago the youth unemployment rate is 91%, well, those youths are still going to look for a way to
you gotta eat
standard of living. Yeah, exactly. And so as Ludwig von Mises says, you know, a lot of people think that the word rational implies doing something moral, but no, the word rational just means you're responding to the forces of nature. It would be irrational to not commit crime if you're in that situation. So
Right.
if the government is going to raise your barriers of entry to the point where you still have to eat, and then on top of that, they are going to ban guns, so now you can count on your subjects to be vulnerable. Well, wow, it would be shocking if you don't have a murder rate 4 times greater than the national average.
Exactly. Right. You take out Chicago, New York, or not New York. You take out Chicago, St. Louis, New Orleans, and Pittsburgh, I believe. You take out just those 5 or 4 cities. America's in the bottom 5% of gun homicides, and they have the most gun ownerships per people in the world.
Absolutely, and I think the thing that you have to be mindful of is you look at who those cities are being ran by. I talk about this all the time because, you know, I'm always talking about race relations and whatnot. I'm always looking at like who runs these cities with all of this crime rate. You know, who are the rulers at the local levels? Top to bottom is Democrat, the same ones that are pushing for more guns.
Why do you think Democrat cities are dying and Republican cities are growing?
Right, exactly. I mean, it's very
I'm not pulling back into I'm not pulling myself back into the paradigm. But when evidence and facts are in your face, you have to admit them. Republican faces are usually nicer. They're not as shitty.
What about
like if you took Detroit, I talked about this. What?
What about Mississippi? They always point out to that, you know, citing the obesity rate and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Mississippi has what it has is it has a lot of black people living in collectivized locations and a lot of white people living in decentralized locations. And the way Republican forms of government works, it tends to favor when you spread out a minority race. That'll happen. But that's why Mississippi is a red state. They're really like Alabama is a red state, but we just now got our first Republican state senate for the last 120 something years, like last year. So
if you don't
Alabama's not a red state.
Yeah, and if you don't mind me interjecting here, I just realized something. I wrote about it in my piece about Abraham Lincoln just about a year ago, believe it or not. And a lot of the places that the leftists like to point to in the South that are in squalor are still in squalor, believe it or not, because of the policies put in place by the government during Reconstruction after the Civil War.
Correct.
So leftists like to point to the South as this bastion of capitalism as proof that capitalism doesn't work, when in reality it's the places that are in squalor is because of the government.
I could go on and on about like the liberals claim it's white flight, but it's not. It's central planning causes all that. You have people with money don't want to interact with people that don't have money. That's an economic fact that most of people just have in them. You want to be around people that are like you. So this white flight thing, the way that the liberals destroy stuff is they'll take people who have no money, whether it be Mexican, black, or white. Thing is, more white people are on welfare than anybody in this country.
You say? Didn't the Republicans do that first, right after the Civil War during the Reconstruction era?
Correct, and the South was Democrat for a long time because
because
the Republicans stole all the land.
Right.
When they won the Civil War, they stole all the land and basically gave it to Republican generals and stuff.
Right. Well, I mean, I think right. Well, I think it's so illegitimate for people to the leftists say they have this the worst, where they always talk about integration and all of this foolery, how free market capitalism fails, and it's like I'm out here in Texas and I would see leftists that are not even from here, definitely like that out there in California, and they're always talking about Texas has the highest has a high uninsured rate, and I'm like, who the hell said that was bad? You know what I mean? Because some of us before this Obamacare shit kicked in, we didn't want it. I didn't want health insurance. I'm healthy as a horse all the time. I got savings.
But the Obamacare is fascism. Pure fascism. You must buy this product or you will be fined. That is the definition of fascism.
Right. That's exactly what it is.
You know what's baffling? People keep claiming that Obamacare is just a website to guide people to purchase the cheapest form of health insurance possible.
Like progressive. No, that's not what it is. A
website with 3,000 pages of regulations.
Yeah. No, what they do is they find you. They got you. Because again, they got me with this the past year. They find me for not wanting the shit. Like that's crazy. Like for literally not wanting and not having it. They were like, no, man, they I forget the actual name of the tax. It has this like very, very collective name. It's like
Affordable Care Act.
Affordable, yeah.
No, not that. No, not the Affordable Care Act. I'm talking about the actual tax, the name of the tax that you get taxed if you don't have it. It's like this. It's this very, very collective name. I forget what it's called.
I can't remember what it's called.
The People's Republic of the United Soviet States.
It's called a penalty. You pay a tax penalty. They don't actually tax you. They take it out of your return.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. So,
like a return adjustment.
Right. Exactly. And again, it has this. It's like this collective ownership. Like basically, you're supposed to give the state this money for not, or letting them keep this money for not having health insurance, and it's completely crazy. It's completely crazy. But again, these leftists always point to these numbers, and I'm always like, or they always say, well, without taxation, without this would happen. And I believe that people definitely that are liberty-minded need to always point. I'm not trying to toot our own horns, but need to point to Texas, and you see how much economic growth that we have had, minus all that bullcrap progressivism that's going out there where they say we need to raise taxes. Well, we don't have an income tax. You know what I mean? We need to gun ownership needs to increase. But we have lax gun ownership. They say, oh well, without all these labor laws, people would own you. Well, we have high GDP per capita as well as lax labor laws. So all of the crap that they say would happen if the federal government didn't have this particular mandate, we don't have that, and we have the most. We're like number one for business. So I'm like, why aren't people looking at data? Why aren't people looking at the facts? The empirical evidence is there.
Because to the useful idiot, to the statist, feels trumps facts. All right, that's it. That's plain and simple. Think about when you were a statist. Feels. You remember Obama? Well, I just talked to blah, 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 Dayton, Ohio. She can't feed her children because she's having to pay for the health care. That's all feels.
Right.
Give me facts, Obama.
Right. Yep.
But if the government can force you to buy health care, they can force you to pay for military, they can force you to pay for the courts, and they can force you to pay for the political parasites, they can force you to do anything. Don't believe the hype. Fuck government.
They will most definitely. I think what got it with me again, this was when I was hardcore into like Supreme Court cases. I'm still really hardcore into that, and how they obviously set precedents. I was wondering even why, as the conservatives, why they weren't I mean, they were up in arms, but they were more so pissed off because Obama, obviously, he's on the other side, and he passed this, he snuck by this act. But if you look at the Supreme Court case and how scary that shit was, like basically, that was the only reason why they declared it legal was because that it appeared in tax form. So basically what that Supreme Court case says is that the federal government, they can really do whatever the hell it is they want, so as long as they hide it in tax form. You know what I mean? That shit to me is scary. You know what I mean? Because that's telling you that, look, we'll do whatever the hell it is that we want to, well, so as long as we say that it's a tax. You know what I mean? We'll own your lives, we'll rob from it, it's crazy.
You must not have heard me say it, as I say it 1,000 times. Everything that a constitutional government does is constitutional because they are the final arbiters of the decision. The Supreme Court is, not us, the Supreme Court, who are unelected and put in place by political leaders. So the Constitution might as well not even fucking be existent. What we have is a political parasite on us, and you have people either advocating for it or against it. Government, all forms of government is slavery. To advocate for it is to advocate for slavery. If you advocate for slavery, I don't want you in my life. I'm not about that.
Right.
And this is why we as libertarians value freedom over coercion. This is why we believe that capitalism produces the most amount of good for the most amount of people, and why we believe our philosophy is the most consistent and moral out there. Any last statements from our co-host before we close here tonight?
Good.
I really appreciate you letting me come on. It was really cool getting to talk to Eric and Justin and, was it Roberto?
Yes, that's it. Roberto. What's your name again?
Dave.
Dave, got you.
Yeah.
Good.
All right, thank you so much, Dave, Eric, and Roberto for coming on tonight. Make sure you guys check out Dave's show, the Seeds of Liberty podcast. Make sure you also like his Facebook page, Google Voluntarism. It is a movement that we are starting to really push forward. And thank you guys so much for tuning into the Liberty Hangout podcast. Make sure you tune into the Liberty Hangout podcast again this Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, when we will be joined by Jeffrey Tucker. You may also want to mark your calendars for this Tuesday, the 5th, when we will likely be joined by our friend Jerry One, who is a voluntarist rapper. Make sure you subscribe to the Liberty Hangout podcast.
When is Eric and Jerry? When is Eric and Jerry gonna do a song? I need it. I need it.
Bro, we were talking about that. We were talking about that. I'm waiting on it, man. I'm like, dude, send me the beat, man, and I'm on it, man. Let's do it.
Dude, I played your endcap rap video. I play that to people, and they're like, "That is straight great." And you didn't even have to cuss, not one time. The whole thing is great.
No, I didn't. Not at all. Not at
I
all.
love
Man.
it. And I'm like a sailor, man. I grew up like down in the South, man. It's all fuck you, dude. It's all cussing nonstop. So
I gotta listen to your music too, Eric. I have to do that.
All right, make sure you guys do subscribe to the Liberty Hangout podcast on iTunes. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, like us on Facebook, follow on Twitter at Liberty Hangout, and make sure you check out libertyhangout.org to read some awesome liberty-minded material from a great lineup of writers. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we will see you next time.
Adios.